Hello, my name is Rob and welcome to Directors Uncut. We put filmmakers from all corners of the globe onto a huge list that covers everything from documentary essays to gory slapstick. It's a hell of an episode. Then we turn it into a lottery of directors by using a random number generator to pick a name out of the hat. Whatever name comes out, myself and a rotating cast of guest hosts from the podcasting world discuss them and their work through two films. This week I have been joined by Mike. Hello there.
Hello.
Graham.
Hello.
And Andy.
Hello.
Yes. How are you all doing?
Not bad. Yeah, it's rainy now. Has anyone seen the rain? That's quite interesting at the moment. Yeah.
I'm in Scotland. Rain's just kind of the default.
Same with Wales usually.
Fair.
Well, I can't pick up after that. You're giving me terrible intro conversation here. I can't segue out of that.
Yeah.
And sound like a glorious pro. So, why bother? So yeah, we've got it's our second two-parter. We've just done Takashi Kitano, and now it's Oh, here we go. Pronunciations. It sounds like an easy name to pronounce, but they're the ones that get you. Alfonso Cuaron.
That's correct.
Yes. That's about right, yeah.
There we go. So, I guess exposure where we first heard about this guy, Mike.
Well, my literal first exposure was the Harry Potter film he directed. Was the first time I was ever aware of him, and then eventually I saw like Children of Men on TV and Gravity. So I'm only sort of aware of like his sort of predominantly his English language stuff. So I've been on the catch up since then, basically.
Well, you've got a hell of a filmography to catch up with.
Yeah.
So it's fine. And I'm asking Graham next, and I'm assuming his answer is going to be exactly the same as mine, but I will push through. So, Graham, Cuaron.
I became aware of him with Et tu m'aimes tant bien. Although I didn't see that at the time. I think the first one I actually saw was, like Mike, his Harry Potter film, which I think was called Harry Potter and the One That Was Good. After that, I became a bit of a convert. I think I've seen every film he's directed since then. I think that's right. It's hard to tell because he goes dormant for long periods.
Yeah. It's deceptively old as well. He's older than I thought he'd be.
Oh, yeah, because he never makes films at a reasonable pace. If he'd make a film every couple of years, like a normal person, he'd be in his mid-20s.
True. And Andy, your first Cuaron exposure?
So it would have been Harry Potter. Would have been the first of his that I've seen, but I wasn't aware that he had made that until after I'd seen Gravity. And then just went back and checked out his kind of back catalogue. And yeah, I've not seen any of these foreign. I've not seen Et tu m'aimes tant bien. Is that right?
Et tu m'aimes tant bien.
Yeah. Paris, je t'aime.
I think that's an anthology thing, isn't it?
Is it? Right, okay. Just got his IMDb up, just to safety. But yeah, it was Gravity would have been the first thing I seen that IMAX, which was probably the best way. Yeah. Best way to see it because obviously we're not going to talk about Gravity, but after I'd seen it once, that was enough type of thing.
I worry that movie won't hold up in any way, shape or form without that sort of big screen experience.
I didn't think it did particularly. I have watched it out with it, so I mean, once should have been enough, and that would have been okay, and it was fine. But it's just the scope of IMAX just adds to it, doesn't it?
Yeah. Personally, I discovered it around the same time that Graham did, although I did watch Et tu m'aimes tant bien, and I was part of the generation of teenagers who were all aroused by it instantly and thought, ooh. So it'd be interesting watching that again.
Was it worth checking out? I've never.
It was a great movie, yeah. Mm-hmm. It's just, it was like, 2001?
Yeah.
So going back a way since I last saw it. Yeah. I think it was when, was it Gael Garcia Bernal?
It was his big breakthrough, him and Diego Luna.
Yeah, so it's got Diego Luna as well, bloody hell.
Yeah.
I realised he was in that too. Wow, okay. So today, I think it's fair to say, we're talking about his two sort of cornerstones, the big movies that everybody knows about and everybody appreciates at least.
I would say
Children
that
of Men.
the cornerstones of him as an auteur. I mean, obviously, his Harry Potter film is pretty big, but people may not know that's him.
I don't think it's a series which is well known for the directors who penned each part of the series. It's more the movie is the big important part rather than who made it.
Exactly. Yeah.
It does go a bit visually different in the third, and again, we're not going to go into this one too much, but the changes the look of kind of a certain few things, which changes it from the kind of cookie cutter kids movies in 1 and 2, and then into something a wee bit better. But yeah, that's all in that I was wanting to say.
It's a bit gothic as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's probably the darkest book.
The two movies, Roma and Children of Men, two very, very different movies. So, what do we want to do first?
I think Children of Men is the one you build to, personally.
Yeah.
Hay manifestación de estudiantes. Ay, Dios mío. No los vayan a golpear otra vez. Mira, ahí se va uno.
So, who wants to? I mean, it's a slim plot, really, but who wants to describe Roma? The plot of Roma.
It is a very slim plot. You're right. It's a sort of character study, I guess, of Cleo, indigenous maid in Mexico City, in the Roma district of Mexico City, hence the name. In the early 70s, she's the cleaner for a rich family. She has a boyfriend called Fermin, and part of the pleasure of it for me is, for a while, it seems like nothing plot-wise is happening, and then it starts to gather together, I think.
Okay, so Mike and Andy, what are your feelings on this? Because I know Graham is a big advocate of this one, but you too.
So this was a first watch for me, and I remember the whole hype around it because it was Netflix really pushing for the Academy Awards. And I wasn't too keen on it, to be honest. I appreciate it as a piece of filmmaking that's beautifully shot, it's well acted. So the cinematography in it's great. I really like the kind of score that's kind of subtle throughout it. It's not a huge part of it. But I just didn't enjoy the overall movie that I got. And again, it's just how I kind of felt about it. I did get a wee bit bored. Even the second half, once there is more of a kind of plot development, I still wasn't massive on it.
Okay, Mike?
So I think I did try to watch this at the time, or at least tried to. I think I gave up at about like an hour and a half in or so. I think probably literally when the plot started to kick in, as it were, like when she goes to the training camp. So watching it fall through, like I liked it, but I didn't really connect with it as emotionally as I felt I should have done, because the story is quite
interesting.
Yeah, it felt a little bit too. I mean, we'll get on to, I guess, the style of it, but the whole continuous take thing is interesting. Watching this back to back with Children of Men, like here, it felt a little bit too removed for me. It felt a little bit. I was noticing that style. I wasn't getting invested in the story for me. But it feels churlish to complain about it. It is like good, but it's just it didn't really resonate with me as strong as I thought it would.
So building up to the champion of it, then Graham.
Yeah,
just defend its honour.
No, I do see that, and I think if you're not sort of charmed by it in the first half, it's going to struggle to get you on board when the plot starts to gather pace. I mean, I really love it. It reminds me of one of my favourite films, Killer of Sheep by Charles Burnett, which is...
I say that.
Yeah, a similar, even though it's very different, like ends of the economic spectrum. Kill of Sheep is also this almost plotless black and white study of a neighbourhood that's clearly made with a lot of love and a lot of attention towards the lifestyles of the people who live there. And I think what is great about it is that Cuaron has made a sort of an Oscar movie, if you get my meaning. You know, it is a family drama rooted in his past, set at this flashpoint in Mexican history. But he's done it in such a way where it's only really about like the start of Act 3, where you think, oh, it's about that. You know, other people would have turned this into Titanic, is what I'm saying. Other people would have had this as like tragic star-crossed lovers in 1970s Mexico torn apart by history and politics. And Cuaron finds it more interesting to him, this life, because it is low-key rather than because it is, you know, significant, because it is historically meaningful. He's celebrating the tiny things, and I really relate to that.
I mean, I've had a bit of a rocky road with this one. This is my third viewing of it, weirdly enough.
Oh.
First time I couldn't finish it. I think it has to be said that it is one of these movies that if you aren't in the right mood for it,
definitely.
I think you will bounce off it almost entirely. Second, I liked it quite a bit, but I pretty much echo what Mike thought in the second viewing. But third viewing, yeah, I think it just really came alive a lot more than it did previously.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah.
I think there's a reason for that. It's kind of like Hangout movies. Hangout movies is just two, or however many people it is, just hanging about, and you sort of experience their life. And these big events, they're not centerpieces. They sort of happen on the periphery of life.
Yeah.
And I think this movie sort of captures that really, really well. He's not trying to make an issues movie. He's not trying to depict these really tumultuous periods in Mexican history. It's just over there happening.
Yeah.
Is it like, I'm maybe remembering this wrong, but is it kind of based around his mother's experience of the time? I think possibly. I'm sure I heard something along those lines when it was getting released, but I might be wrong.
It's based on his childhood memories. Yeah, right. I think the wife of the family that Cleo is working for is probably slightly inspired by his mother. I think I remember because he did come from a sort of fairly well-off background. Interestingly, the family in this aren't quite as well off as they want to project. There's that great running gag about the car going into the garage where the car is just slightly too big for the garage and they have to be very careful parking it because they're giving an impression of themselves as being richer and more affluent than they actually are.
It's an interesting thing, isn't it? Yeah. Image of Mexico as a really fractured thing.
Yeah, in American films, it tends to be depicted as a very uniform place because it's depicted, I guess, in opposition to America. And in terms of countries having relationships with each other, I think Mexico's definitely the junior partner there. But there's a real sense of the social strata and the racial diversity of Mexico too. It is very important at times that Cleo can speak a language that the family who employ her can't.
And I didn't know it existed before this movie.
Yeah, I did like that. No. Yeah.
So is that like a Mexican dialect of Spanish that she's speaking?
It's like a
Mixteco, I think it's called, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's an indigenous thing. It's like it existed before the Spanish invasion. Right. Apparently, Yalitza Aparicio, who plays Cleo, couldn't speak it. that's how sort of far it's fallen from the culture. She had to learn it especially for this film.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. We have to talk about it because it's so heavily geared around the long take cinematography.
Mm-hmm.
So what are our feelings on it here?
I can see why it sticks slightly in people's craw, because unlike something like Gravity, where you buy a ticket for Gravity and you want to be blown out of your seat visually, I can see why people think this very small story about like childcare is a weird venture to be using this on. But I think it's less showy than a lot of his previous films in that way. Like the camera moves that stick out in my head are just simple ones where it pans around the house. That sticks out to me as being the kind of domestic observation that the film is all about.
Okay.
I think for me, the kind of standout one of that is the end. Don't know, not want to jump ahead, but that was a beautiful shot with the sunset behind and following Cleo into the water as she's kind of saving the kids. And this is what I was saying about it. It just wasn't particularly for me, but I can appreciate parts like that.
Yeah.
The one where it kind of stuck and kind of like you're saying, Graham, kind of stuck in my craw a wee bit was when she's at the camp and it just kind of lingers on it. It felt a bit too long, just a static shot just on her for maybe 10, 20 seconds too long. Like just wee bits like that, yeah. But it was the end scene for me was probably the best use of it, I think.
And there's a Belgian film, I can't remember this name because it's incredibly long, about a woman just doing sort of household chores.
Oh, yeah, I know the one, yeah.
And day, Rob, one day I'm going to get you to watch it and you'll love it.
I may lose my mind by watching it and then somehow come round to loving it through that process. But
that could be what happened to me. You know, I gave it 5 stars on Letterboxd, but it could have been Stockholm Syndrome.
Well, maybe.
I think people earn money on Twitch doing that now as well, don't they? That's what it's you can sleep. You can just have a camera on your feet for 24 hours and folk will give you fucking tips.
Oh, man. Chantal Ackerman's Twitch stream would have been great. I'm so glad that we never got to see that.
I think there's a point to it, though, the long-take cinematography.
Yeah.
And what was... it's a terrible movie. Probably shouldn't be referencing it, but it's the one with she's working in compliance, I think it was called.
Oh, right. Which I haven't seen.
That one, I think.
Not seen
where
that.
It's a woman who's in a fast food chain and she gets phone call from somebody who's posing to be a policeman, and the policeman asks her to do stuff, explicit stuff. It has that same sort. I mean, it's a bit of a weird reference, but it's that sort of in Escape. You are looking at this person's life on the bottom rung of Mexican society. It'd be easy to cut away and to lessen the, how would I word this? Lessen the sort of poverty. But sticking with her, it means that you see her through thick and thin. You see the full picture of her life, not just the edited and presented one.
Yeah, and that is nice when it feels like you're watching like a snapshot. Like I really like the when they're at like the uncles for Christmas, and again it feels like you just like the camera's just sort of planted in the corner, and you're watching them sort of running about. And it feels nice because it feels like you're just sort of like is sat in that room. So that's when it's really nice, is when it's there to be, you're just observing, and that is the impression you get all the way through. It never feels too like flashy in that regard. So it didn't really bother me, the long takes. Like it was just like, it's like once you notice it, you can't not notice it. If that makes sense. Like once you fail to like, rather than going for what it's being used for. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, my first take was with a long take. I mean, if you have Christmas dinner every day of the year, you get sick of it eventually. But I didn't see the point of all the long takes, and I did in the third viewing. So yeah, it's just one of those movies where you got to look for it. I think if you want to look for it, that is, because it isn't a movie that's really designed for everybody.
Yeah, I think that's like what you're saying, like the style of the filmmaking, and it the point that I made about the scene at the camp, it kind of also, while it did annoy me slightly, it also gave a good impression of her kind of loneliness and abandonment at that moment, because she's seeing this group of boisterous men going off to do whatever it is they're doing. She obviously at that point doesn't really fully understand what's happening. And she's just left on her own with, obviously, at this point we found out she's pregnant to this to Ferma. And it's a good depiction of that, but I just felt it was just, a wee bit too stretched.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I mean, as far as depictions in Mexico, I think this is probably the most hopeful I've seen from a lot of people. Usually it's Mexico as a cesspit. It's all doomed.
It's not Sicario. I think we can all agree on that.
There's usually a yellow filter over, isn't there? You just take that out, make it black and white. It's fine.
Yeah.
So, any other thoughts about Roma?
I did wonder. I've not actually seen Belfast, but I wonder if there's a comparison to be made. And that's also like a black and white film based on like a childhood memory thing. I don't know. Also, sort of Oscar worthy. I don't really have much to say beyond that.
Well, that one is a bit Oscar bait, a bit of a postcard movie.
Right. I got the impression that's what Kenneth Branagh's obviously a very different sort of director to Alfonso Cuaron.
He's not a very good one. So
I think the Troubles are a bit more at the front and centre of it as well, more than.
Right. Okay.
I've seen parts of it, and certainly the parts that I've seen, it seems like the Troubles play a bigger part than. So is it Mexican Revolution?
No, it's like it's. I forget what it's called. Let me have a look at it. But it wasn't like an event that changed the government. It was more of a sort of a kind of like the same kind of thing as the Kent State massacre would be in America. You know, the Corpus Christi massacre. That's what it's called. Thank you, Wikipedia.
Right. Okay.
Another episode in a very, very chaotic modern history.
Yeah.
I haven't read as many Mexican responses to it as I should, and this time I became very curious about that because it feels like the time period is very vague until the New Year's party, at which point someone says something like goodbye to 1970. Yeah. And I wonder if for a Mexican audience who know this history, is that a big, oh shit moment? You know, is that when the penny drops that this is where it's going? I don't know.
It must be nice, you know, because it did connect with a lot of Spanish-speaking and Mexican audiences. Because honestly, there's not a lot of movies made for that audience.
Yeah, we might be the wrong sort of group of people to be talking about it, I guess.
Yeah, well there is that, but also
the limits of a 4 white guys movie podcast here. I think
that is true, but at the same time, a lot of movies that present Mexico, they present it as sort of third class and third everything. Really, there's no respect spent on Mexico. Whereas as a Mexican person talking about Mexican history, I think it's the right person doing the right film with the right messages at its heart.
Completely,
Demands a lot of patience, though.
Yeah, that was it. I think that was another thing. I feel like it could have maybe been about 20 minutes shorter. Because I think it gives you a good background of the family. Because certainly the mother. You don't really see much of the father in it, and that comes to pass later on when he just kind of vanishes totally from the film. And the mum seems quite erratic and snappy, and she can be all peace and love to Cleo 1 minute, and then the next second she's just giving her a bollocking for not picking up dog shit. And it's a good kind of depiction of that, her kind of daily life as being the maid. But maybe a wee bit of time. I mean, Alfonso Cuaron knows more than me, but maybe a wee bit kind of shaved off might have made it a bit more palatable for me.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. Any closing thoughts on Roma before we pick who is next? Are we all spent?
The only thing that we haven't talked about is the Netflix factor. And I do think with a film that is this contemplative, it's not Gravity in the sense of a thing you have to see on the big screen, but I would have enjoyed the chance to sit in a darkened room with no distractions and really sink into it. And it's a pain because no one other than Netflix would fund a movie like this now, but also they're quite a bad platform to watch it on.
Yeah, I think it was in cinemas, but probably only in London or something, or in one showing
Yeah.
in Britain,
Just enough for it to be qualified as a cinematic release.
Yeah.
Because was it this one was the controversy, like it being at Cannes, or that one of the other ones? I can't remember.
Well, Cannes it just hit everything. It just
Well,
controversy, you know.
But they were really anti, like, if it's on Netflix and it's not been in the cinema, it's not.
It's not a
film.
real movie. Fnuff.
Yeah, because when was Because when was The Irishman? Because it was like this and An Irishman came out.
I think The
like,
Irishman was the year after this.
Right,
that was when a bit of the Netflix ill feeling had been burned through by then.
It's interesting you say that about watching it at a cinema. I think if I had watched it in a cinema as well, I would have been more engaged with it a bit. It's really easy, even when you're still sitting, and I was sitting fully focused on the film, you can still get that wee bit distracted.
Yeah.
And you can say, "I'll just jump to the toilet quickly and pause it." It still kind of takes you out it a little bit. Even if you'd not particularly, but if you're in the cinema, you would just sit there for that whole 2 hours 10, 2 hours 15 that it is, and get that engagement. And you know, we're seeing it definitely a lot more since the kind of, we're not out of the pandemic yet, but we're at the tail end of it, and companies are still sticking with the streaming. Like I think we're getting the new Predator movie, Prey, which has been getting rave reviews everywhere, like 4 or 5 stars. Some people have probably wrongly said it's better than the original, but that's getting no cinema release, and it's just coming straight to Disney Plus. Which is crazy.
It's weird,
and that's a Predator. That's definitely something you would want to see on the big screen. And
it's a spectacle.
It's a bad trend. Like I don't like it. I'd rather have the opportunity, because I remember being hyped for this before it came out, and I never got around to watching it just because it was on Netflix and it was almost too easy to watch. But if I'd went out my way to the cinema to see it,
exactly,
it's like a special feeling when you go to the cinema, because it's not going to be there forever. You got to catch it while it's there, catch it in its best version, and it's its nice suit and everything, and all dressed up and posh. Or just see it. It's there. It'll always be there. Whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think I understand why all of the kind of post-lockdown cinemas back stuff has revolved around big spectacle-based movies. I understand why people think that's more of a you have to see this in the cinema experience, but it would be a shame if the indie sector rested too much on streaming, because some of my favourite cinema experiences have been allowing myself to really concentrate on something that is very small.
Yeah. I mean, I know it's not this podcast what it is, but I think there's a point of meshing between streaming and cinemas, and they're just sort of too separate from each other now. It's weird.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, again, you saying that, and we're going off topic a wee bit here, but like the Jurassic World Dominions just came on to streaming, and it's like 45 days after. That's fine, and they're still making money because it's the pay-to-view, PPV, whatever you want to call it. And getting that balance, to getting the 40, 45 days in the screen, and the people who don't want to go yet and are still maybe a bit apprehensive about going out and sitting in full movie theatres can still get that chance, and it should be balanced that way, especially for the directors as well. They don't want everyone watching their movies on phones and laptops, and I'm sure they're happy
Big
to get
Lynch definitely doesn't.
That video is evergreen.
You like money. You got a great big dollar sign there where most women have a heart. So play it smart. Stay in character and you'll have money. Plenty of it. George will have it. He'll blow it all on you.
Johnny, I'm no good for anybody else. I'm not pretty and I'm not very smart, so please don't leave me alone anymore.
So what makes you think or know that you're going to have several $100,000?
Because I do. I just can't talk about it, that's all.
Not even to me, your little share.
I shouldn't have even mentioned I was going to have it. It's not that I mind. I know I can trust you. But if these other guys
These other guys?
I can't talk about it, Cherry.
You've been talking. Now you spilled to her.
I didn't, honest. What, do you think I'm crazy? I wouldn't...
Jerk, you clown. Come on, clown. Sing us a chorus from Pagliacci.
Hey, where's the jerk? Where's George?
Now we're at the point of the show where we pick who is going to be up on an upcoming episode. So we have a list of 463 directors.
I'm going to slightly correct you there, Rob. I'm going to jump in. We hadn't taken Alfonso Cuaron out, so it's 462.
Okay, so that'd be embarrassing, wouldn't it, if Cuaron came again?
Landed on him twice, yeah.
So it's only 462. It's not a massive number like 463. So you've whittled it down a bit there.
Yeah.
So, the next director is going to be, please be a good one, fingers crossed. Generate number 402. 402.
Oh, wow, that is a good one. And I think you should ready yourself for another two-parter.
Oh, not a third one on the bounce, come on.
402 is Stanley Kubrick.
Oh, well, okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
I think I'm down for that one. I can't remember if I put my name down for that one or not.
I mean, where'd you begin, really? I mean,
everyone did, probably.
Right. You can narrow down to 4.
You have to do. Let's just assume it's a two-parter. You have to do The Shining. I think you have to.
Yeah.
Yes.
2001.
Again, you sort of have to, don't you?
So, what are your curveballs? I mean, Barry Lyndon could be an interesting one to do, and I still haven't seen Barry Lyndon.
Very few people have seen Barry Lyndon.
Not seen that.
Paths of Glory is great. I watched that the other day with my dad. That's one that people don't talk about enough, I think.
Yeah.
That'd be an interesting foursome, that, yeah.
Those pre-Spartacus ones generally get a bit overlooked, and it would be nice to have something from that era.
I always forget Spartacus.
Eyes Wide Shut.
Eyes Wide Shut would be a fun one. This is the problem, isn't it? As you said, how do you narrow it down to 4?
His early noir are very interesting. Is it The Killing that he did?
Yes.
That's a great movie. Again, no, not enough people talk about it.
AI up until Steven Spielberg took over and brought in aliens or whatever it was that happened in that.
Oh, yeah, he did do that, didn't he? That's a weird movie with a weird history.
Yeah, I hated it. But, it's been a while. Clockwork Orange, of course.
Yeah, we did mention Clockwork
Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah, so if you look at the list, it's going to make it even harder.
Wasn't like Full Metal Jacket shot in somewhere ridiculous? It's presented as being...
Isn't it Isle of Dogs or something, isn't it?
It's London's Docklands.
It's Vietnam.
I know London's pretty grim in some places, but come on.
Dr. Strangelove.
My all-time favourite film, Dr. Strangelove.
We had a nice segue there for The Children of Men, with like Britain, there's dystopia.
we missed that.
Wow.
Yeah, Dr. Strangelove. Oh, I love Dr. Strangelove.
I'm looking at these and I've only seen Full Metal Jacket and The Shining and Clockwork Orange. Those are the only ones I've seen. I've never seen Space Odyssey, Dr. Strangelove. He's one of those directors. It's kind of...
I'll just say, if anybody tries to fight out The Shining being on these episodes, I will come to your house. I will do stuff.
I will come to your house and hack through the door with a fire axe.
Here's Robbie.
If I ever call myself Robbie, I know I've lost my mind completely, so it's kind of fitting.
You've got to have The Shining in there. You can't know, even just for the... You could have a half-hour chat talking about how much Stephen King despises it.
Stephen King just needs a bit of a break, doesn't he? He's a bit...
Man needs a hobby. He likes too much, I think.
Get off Twitter for a bit, you'll be fine.
I'm actually looking, and AI isn't in his filmography.
It's not
directed by.
Yeah, it wasn't actually directed at all. He started it. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And then gave it to Spielberg.
Probably uncredited. There's a few bits like that in cinema history.
It's probably like a thanks to Stanley or something. I imagine.
Because everything's just Eyes Wide Shut. It's just the last one they've got.
Yeah.
Interesting. I assumed that was his last one. I thought they were really far into shooting, and then he died, and then Spielberg took over. But I still blame him for the aliens. So it was just dumb.
Yeah, of course it is. You've seen what he did with Indiana Jones. Of course it was.
Yeah, and also the marketing. The marketing for it made it out as if it was this war movie between sentient robots and man. And they were on the run, and it kind of wasn't a run in the movie, but it wasn't that. It was kind of like Pinocchio.
Yes, it was very, very
I'm not
like
a fan.
Pinocchio.
Yeah.
Wait till the Spielberg episode and you cover that one.
That is the biggest fish we've had. That is, if you're going to put like a top 10, hypothetical of the best filmmakers of all time, there's not such thing, but if you were going to put a list like that together, Stanley Kubrick would probably be on that list.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I don't think we've had maybe Fellini, but he hasn't really had the cut through.
Yeah,
where's Craven?
Craven's
massive.
Cut through. Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, so Kubrick, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Nostalgics out there. A blast from the past all the way back from 2003. That beautiful time when people refused to accept the future was just around the corner.
Hey, you're snoring.
No, I wasn't.
Yes, you were. He always snored.
Where are we? Canterbury. We're close. Anyone know if there's a hotel around here? What? Julian promised me a little bit of action.
You still like it in the afternoon?
So what'd you do? Rob a train? Blow up a building?
Leave the girl alone. You told me he was suave. Wankers are drunk. He's suave. Should have seen him in the old days when he was a real activist.
You were the activist. I just wanted to get laid.
One time, the police came to throw us out of our squat, and Theo invited them up for coffee to negotiate, only the coffee was spiked with ketamine. No. You did you?
Oh, fuck off. You gotta be kidding.
You know how many people I've tried this
don't
with?
wanna know.
You'll be happy to know, out of the hundreds, you are still the
I'm not doing it.
one. Yes, you are.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you
The
are.
car's moving
yes,
too
you
much.
Are. Mm-hmm. You are. Right? Hilarious. No, wait. Okay. Do it again. Julian, that's disgusting. Look out!
Jesus! Shit.
Go. We're gonna make it. Come on, we're gonna make it.
I'm not gonna make it!
So that leads us to the second movie that we're going to be talking about in today's episode, 2006's Children of Men. Who wants to synopsize this dense little number?
I'll give this a go. Make it as simple as I can. So, she is 2027 and childbirth is no more. It's been 18 years since there was last a child born in 2009, I think it says in it. Mm-hmm. And Clive Owen's character Theo is approached to get a young girl out of the UK. And throughout the course of the film, he finds out she's pregnant, and essentially he's trying to get her to safety. It's a very dystopian UK that they're living in, or
no,
what we would call.
It's real.
I know. I was just going to say it could be. Right, I know, 5 years. I know, and we're going that way. But it's essentially looking at different elements of the dystopia and trying to save this woman and her eventually born child.
It's incredible, isn't it? It's incredible.
It gets better every time I see it. Yeah.
I don't know why I've kind of distanced myself from it a little bit, but I don't know. It's just an odd film. It doesn't get the reputation it deserves. It's kind of been a bit pushed away to the side. Because I think there's like a very defined line in sci-fi, modern sci-fi. There's sort of pre-Marvel and there's post-Marvel.
Yeah, that's fair.
And this is very pre-Marvel, and it's a masterpiece of that. But sci-fi has changed so much.
Yeah, it's weird though. I feel like if you mention Children of Men to anyone, they'll go, "Oh yeah, great film." Like it's one of those, isn't it? It's like, and anyone who's seen it will be like, "Oh yeah, it's good, isn't it?"
I think it has a very devout cult. But it was interesting, like remembering back to seeing this at the cinema and being very excited about it. And my memory of the reviews is that they were very positive, but even then, I don't think people grasped what a remarkable film this was. I don't think people knew how much this was going to change filmmaking in a lot of ways.
It's a very clever movie. If you've not seen it before, it is sci-fi, but it's not like spaceships and superpowers. It's one subtle difference. The world is fundamentally the same, but bleaker, but one subtle change. It just completely upended everything.
It's very kind of V for Vendetta feel to that element, that style of sci-fi dystopia. One thing you don't really see is Britain's clearly like a fascist state of some kind in it. There's a line where I think, is it Michael Caine says, these poor bastards, talking about the refugees that have come into the country, they come in here and then they get hunted and deported. And it's like...
you just picture Priti Patel riding a horse, with a sword.
Fucking 4 horsemen.
That is the bit that like stands out now as like, oh wow, that is basically now. Everything to do with immigration in this film is like, yeah, that's what's happening.
It's frighteningly prescient. It's not just this international sort of a refugee policy. It's just generally everything. It's spooky.
Yeah, the bit that floored me this time that I'd completely forgotten about is the very tiny detail that Theo, the lead character's son, died during a flu pandemic.
Yep. Yeah.
Yikes. Yes.
It's quite interesting how that's the kind of nods to his son having been around, and there's no like overly sentimental flashback. There's a small conversation between him and Julianne Moore, and then Michael Caine's giving a story over drinks with the kind of runaways, and he mentions what happened. That's the only way you find out, and that's really it. That's all you really hear about his son. Dylan, I think the boy's name is. And it's good way. It's the perfect way for this movie to do it, because you don't always get the full story in this film. It's only what's happening to your characters. Kind of similar to what we've seen we were discussing Roma earlier on. The focus is on Clive Owen as the focus. It's the camera follows him. So there's no huge exposition. There's no big bad or anything like that, really, as such. There's people who are wrong, who have maybe the wrong motivations for your characters, but it's good the way they kind of drop it in, as you're saying, kind of quite subtly.
That was part of what I think people missed about it at the time, how groundbreaking it was in terms of exposition and narrative. I think that people weren't ready for a film where so much of the information is conveyed visually. Like when we first meet Michael Caine as Jasper, there's like a pan across a board of memorabilia he has, and that's him and his wife's backstory. I mean, there's even that bit early on where Theo's being held in this hut by Julian and the Fishes, the terrorist group she's part of. And the walls are covered in newspapers that in a film set in the present day, the props designer would just buy some newspapers. But because this is set in the future, all of those walls have details on about civil wars in other countries, about King Charles III making a statement. And these are literally background details. These are literally things that are in the background of a scene that's about something totally different, but it teaches you so much about how this world works.
It's some of the best world building and design. It's miraculous, because even on production level, memory kind of was a bit weird with this one. I didn't realise how expansive and big it is, how much ground it covers, how affected the world is. How much they've changed in the design of it. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's something. So I was listening to the audiobook of the book just out of interest, and it's very interesting how I'm actually sort of struggling with it, because it loads up the exposition. It starts in like 2021, so you're seeing Theo and he's telling the story, and it's very exposition heavy in a way that's quite sort of it takes like it's much more about like him meeting Julian for the first time, and it's almost like the exact opposite of what this film does in terms of how it does the exposition. But yeah, that's what I was saying about the design. I just love the bit where he visits his brother, and you just get this transition of just like him in the car, and he's like, you see him in sort of like the chaotic, littered sort of slums of London, and then as he gets to like Battersea, there's like these gardens with like animals running around. And it's even just something as simple as that. It's like that transition when Colin Farrell's in the car in Widows. It's that sort of simple thing of just you move from one area to the next, and you can see immediately what the social structure is without having to explain that's what it is, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that scene in Widows is one of the many scenes in Hollywood movies that you can point at and say that's post Children of Men. You know, I think Mad Max Fury Road is a post Children of Men film that maybe if this hadn't come before it, they wouldn't have been able to tell so much of that story in terms of visual images and offhand references and other non-expositional methods. I think that's the most important ground that it broke.
Cast.
Yeah.
This has a spoiled for choice cast. It's amazing.
I forgot Chiwetel Ejiofor's in it.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's a treat, and yeah. Sam Ferris and people cropping up here and there. Oh God,
what's he called? He's a secret Geordie. He keeps on hiding the fact that he's a Geordie. And he turns up in American stuff.
Charlie Hunnam, man, I was really pleased to see that he could remember to do a Geordie accent in this, because judging by his recent interviews, he has forgotten entirely.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, Michael Caine, it's probably a controversial opinion, but it's probably one of my favourite roles of his ever, honestly.
Yeah, I think he's easily incredible in this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, playing the old hippie, essentially.
Yeah.
But strawberry cough.
Do you know who he based that character on, who his inspiration for it was?
I don't know.
Back in the 60s, Michael Caine got stoned with John Lennon a couple of times, and Jasper is basically his memories of John Lennon.
That makes a lot of sense, especially with the whole pull my finger thing, which obviously becomes a heartbreaking thing. But yeah, that's interesting. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Even the way he looks, the way he sort of holds himself, I can see the Lennon.
I've got to mention the long take cinematography in this, because I think it's just as earned as it is in Roma, but there's one in particular here. I mean, it's just a string of long take shot after long take shot. That's just the way his movies are put together.
Yeah.
But there's one here which is incredibly emotional. It's at the end when everything's kicking off at Bexhill, and he just walks out afterwards. I think that is the sort of cementing moment for me when I realise, this is probably a masterpiece, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
The thing I love about it is that walking away and then literally like walk a few feet and then the shooting starts again.
Yeah.
It's just like within like a few seconds, it's like back to normal, and it's again because it's that continuous thing. You really feel that jolt, in a really affecting way.
Yeah,
I mean, you justify the long takes in the same way as in Roma. You just can't escape.
Yeah,
you can't escape this bleakness, but there's more going on here in an action sense.
Yeah.
They're interestingly different long takes, aren't they? Like the long takes in Roma have a kind of meditative effect. They're meant to make you settle in and relax into a scene, whereas this is immersive in a very different way. This kept reminding me, and I think Cuaron mentioned this as an inspiration, actually. It kept reminding me of the Battle of Algiers, that very famous 60s film, which is the first film to have shot a war movie as though it was newsreel. And what I like is that the long takes aren't perfect. They have a great technical accomplishment, but when a bomb goes off, they shake. When someone gets shot, the blood splatters on the camera lens. You know, it never feels too smooth and effortless. There's always a sense of danger in the takes.
Yeah, that was what I was going to mention. Actually, a bomb goes off and you're feeling it because of the reaction of the camera. And there's another point I was going to make. It almost feels, certainly during the kind of battles, the kind of running battles throughout the movie, war documentary style, you're watching in a Middle Eastern country, in the BBC are filming something that's happening live there and then, or Ukraine at the minute, even. Say Middle Eastern there, a bit narrow-minded, but Ukraine.
That's part of what it's doing, isn't it? I mean, this is made in the noughties when the Iraq War had just kicked off, and part of the point is, look, we're not immune. You know, here's Abu Ghraib-style prisons. Here's like terrorist attacks on the streets of modern Britain.
Yeah, I mean, that's the opening scene, isn't it? Are they kind of the start of the movie anyway? Is it he's Greg's? The big giant Greg's, and then he goes out and is it the Greg's or the coffee shop that blows up? Or is it next to it or something, isn't it? Yeah. And you get that ringing in his ears, and it's fantastic, and it's quite how well it's shot. It still feels like quite a dirty movie that gets under your fingernails. Like everything's dusty and horrible, and you're not guaranteed to get a shower at the end of every day type of thing. It's like feel like immersive in that way.
The thing that really works for me on that, just there, one thought. When you're doing long take cinematography, if one thing goes wrong, you have to literally reset every last thing to how it was exactly and do it again.
Yeah.
And I think this evades it by having that sort of scruffy, dirty, ramshackle nature to it, that sort of war documentary thing, which is inspired sort of a production level, but also it just gives it this real reality.
Like the one shot thing is in the past few years certainly is become more popular, but there becomes really obvious kind of fake out parts where you can tell the camera's changed. Like 1917, I never really got the hype around that, and there's like a really obvious bit, like the camera will go underwater and he pops back up, or he falls asleep so the camera turns off. And you go, well, that's not a one shot. But this is done more of like it's a part of an explosion will maybe block the camera, which they can then do. They can transfer an edit point in there, and Birdman as well. That was another one that was fucking awful. And
gimmick.
This a gimmick. Yeah, it's not. This isn't really used as a gimmick. This is just the way of telling the story. And
exactly.
These other ones just don't get that the way this does.
Mike, you were going to say?
Well, I think the difference like with Roma is that it always sort of it's always a little bit like distanced a little bit, just in terms of where the camera's literally placed. Whereas this is sort of right up in there, and that's what again gives you that sort of thing is that you can't escape from it. And also just like the fact of like obviously this all had to be like choreographed and stuff, but it all still feels random. Like when he's sort of running through the hospital at the end, it feels like it's like, oh, we can't go in there because somebody's, and then he's got to turn around, and obviously they've had to like choreograph that literally, but it doesn't feel choreographed. It's really just astonishing trick to pull off to still get that sense of chaos.
Almost feels like a first-person shooter at times during the battle scenes.
That is a bit.
Like it's not like a full-on video game, but there is that element of it, the way your camera would shake if a bomb goes off near you playing Modern Warfare or something like that. There's that element to it as well. It's better than a game.
Peter Mullen has said.
Peter Mullen.
I love Peter Mullen at the best of times, but this is incredible, isn't it?
Speaking in the third person.
That was such a strange decision, but it works.
It's just the cast. The cast is just perfect, honestly. I don't think. Apparently, the black girl who plays I can't remember her name. Who says Wicked? Key. She retired from acting after this because honestly, where could you get?
No,
but I think in only in recent few years that she's come back. She took a break to go to university.
I'd seen her recently. You're right, for a long time she just did seem to vanish, which is weird because she's so great in this. But she is acting again now.
Because she's going up against all of these titans and these heavyweights, and she holds her own so well.
I guess you could sort of quibble slightly of like how much character do we get from her because she is sort of the one who's being sort of dragged around, as it were. You know, I think I've seen some sort of criticism of that.
We do in the quieter moments. We realise who she is, what sort of person she is, and you realise she is just a kid that she says wicked to everything, and she's so impressed by things. She's just a kid.
She's very forthright in the way she wants to be. She's brave, like she shows herself to Theo in the barn to show that she's pregnant. But even the first kind of encounter in the car. And he's saying he's like kind of looking at us. What have you done? She goes, what the fuck are you looking at? It's like you get it kind of. She's bristly and she's got her own personality. And she's quite she's quite abrasive. But there's obviously she's scared about what she's going through, and she even explains at one point. She's like, no one told me about pregnancy, and there's not something that gets explained.
That is an incredible part of sort of world building as well. It's something so everybody knows about pregnancy. What it entails, whether you've experienced it or not, you've got like an idea of the whole thing, but to write it in the script and exist in that world where it's just not a thing. It's so subtle but beautifully implemented, I think.
No, it's the thing that sort of struck me on this viewing in terms of like imagining what a world without children would be like is when they're hiding out of that ruined building, and it was only on this viewing that I realised, oh shit, it's a school. Because, of course, all the schools have been ruined. Course, yeah. No one needs them anymore. And I just think that's genius.
Subtle little seeds of what it would be like to live in a world without pregnancy. It's so clever.
Mm.
But we've pushed about it. I mean, there's got to be something shit about it. Come on, Neil. Look deep in your pockets.
You're wrong.
Deep in there. There's got to be something. Anything. A bit of balance. Come on. I think I've stumped them.
I genuinely can't think of anything that really.
Man.
There's nothing that would come out straight away that you think, it's a bit rubbish, isn't it? No, there's nothing. I honestly can't think of it. I think it's flawless. I think it's a flawless movie. Like I genuinely think there's nothing.
There's very few of them. But
pacing's perfect. It builds up the tension. It pays off at the end. It gives a depiction of what life is probably like at the moment for refugees in this country. Then at a time when maybe the seeds were getting sown for what we're at now with that. But I genuinely can't think of anything to quibble with.
I mean,
it'd be really nitpicking.
Oh yeah, I know it's Priti Patel's sort of dream board, but we can't drink it down on that.
I've heard if you've heard the Tom Six's Anania Club, where it's about people who watch movies and pleasure themselves they not watch movies, pleasure themselves to tragedies. It's never been released. So that's a bit but of course it's not. But this is what I think Priti Patel probably watches when she does that.
It's Tom Six on the list.
I don't think
he's not, because he's just a bloody edgelord, isn't he? I mean, grow up.
Yeah, pretty much. But you know what I mean? Priti Patel's got like 10 versions of this because she's not clever enough to get the subtlety of it and just sees it as, look at what I can do.
She's got like a whole wall of TVs like Bowie and The Man Who Fell to Earth just lined up all playing this.
Before we get too political, we draw a line.
The last time I was in there, it was Michael Moore, to be fair.
But I think I was just looking to be a bit of balance because we have gushed, but I think it's one of the very, very few occasions where we can actually just gush because there's not many movies that are this sort of consistent throughout.
I would have loved to jump in and be awkward and say something's wrong, but I genuinely was stumped to even think of a joke answer.
Yeah,
I mean, I can't remember the music, but other than that, I probably wasn't paying attention.
There's some like choral stuff, but it is deliberately sparse. I think it's usually at sort of like. I notice it's usually when the character dies, always like is like disappears, and then obviously at the end. I guess you could slightly not quibble with the ending. Like it is a bit Hollywood. The ending, not a little, only like a shred, but it's just maybe that's just because it's been such a despair film to have a shred of optimism feels wrong almost.
The world is saved by fishermen.
Maybe done a bit more Julianne Moore and Chiwetel Ejiofor, but I mean, it's not like their parts were wasted. They weren't used enough. But that's again, it's really bare bones nitpicking. It's hard to find anything.
So that's the ex-girlfriend, is it?
The old ex-girlfriend.
Jodie Foster.
Jane Foster.
The one that got away.
The one that got away.
That means escaped.
Yeah.
Must be hard for you to see your ex-girlfriend and your ex-hammer hanging out and getting on so well. What you up to, bro?
Go to Daddy.
No, Neil.
Hey, there you are. Hey. I was just calling you.
So that's enough gushing with Alfonso Cuaron. So we are at the part of the show now where we talk about other things that we have been watching and plug stuff. If you want to plug stuff, please plug stuff. So, who wants to get in first? Jump in first, Andy?
I'll go first. The most recent trip to the cinema was I saw Thor: Love and Thunder. I had a full empty cinema with reclining seats. It was great. It is not as good as Ragnarok, but I don't get the hate for it that people are coming out with recently. Like, it seems It seems that there's now a movement of it's cool to have a go at Taika Waititi. It seems to be building up, and I don't know if that's going to keep going. I really enjoyed it.
I think there's just on that. I think there's a little bit of he was a bit too public of his private life, and it rubbed people up a bit the wrong way.
Yeah, aye, it could be that. But in terms of the movie, maybe a bit too much of ad-libbing and kind of off-the-cuff stuff in it that Natalie Portman's character, and maybe Natalie Portman just as an actress, doesn't seem to be able to keep up with Chris Hemsworth, but Chris Hemsworth's one of the best around for that.
I mean, he's got to have a flaw. He's just cheating, isn't he?
Yeah, I know. And so great fun, great kind of wee cameo for Russell Crowe in it. He's brilliant as Zeus. Korg maybe outstays his welcome a bit in this one, but yeah, I thought it was great fun. As I said, don't get the hate. It's one of the lowest ranked MCU movies. I think there's a lot more worse.
Oh yeah, that's way worse. I haven't seen it, but just
you know that
really bad.
It was a Thor 2.
Thor 2, yeah, oh god. Iron Man 2 for me is worse as well. And then I watched The Grey Man last night. Netflix new
most expensive.
Is it?
I think it was the most expensive movie they've ever produced.
Yeah, they blew a lot of things up. It was a generic action movie, but they've just got Ryan Gosling and Chris Evans in the leads, which seems to have, if it didn't have them, it would be one of those ones you wouldn't find because of the algorithm. It was fine. Like I didn't hate it. It's a fine brainless Sunday night movie, which is when I watched it. So
I find Ryan Gosling really weird. I mean, he's actor superstar, good looking, but he has a vibe about him which is not of that world. I can't wrap my head around him.
He's a bit creepy.
All the comments he's been making about the Barbie film and how he's playing Ken, he's talking about it as some spiritual experience, which is just making me more hyped for that movie.
Yeah,
it's weird.
It's fine. Ryan Gosling is fine. Kind of plays a very cold, similar character. He's to the driver, but he's a bit more personality than that. And Chris Evans,
has a mustache.
He has a mustache. He's also the bad guy. He's the antagonist, and he's kind of trying to play it a bit screwball-y. And just because it's Captain America, I just kind of take him as a really psychotic villain. Like, it didn't really land very well, but it was fine. Possibly a wee bit long, but if it had been a Liam Neeson movie, you wouldn't bat an eyelid.
Yeah, makes sense. Anything else? Or are we moving to?
I think that's me. Yeah, I don't think I've seen it now.
Graham, then move on to Graham, right to left.
Well, if we're plugging, it will be out and then some by the time this comes out, but I am working at the moment on a Geek Show review for the new Criterion Collection reissue of Summertime by David Lean. And it's sort of interesting for me that Lean's a director I have a weird history with, because when I was growing up, all I heard about him was, Lawrence of Arabia or Bridge on the River Kwai, and I thought, yeah, I'm going to hate these movies. They're going to be big, boring, pompous epics, and I still haven't seen a lot of his later work. With Lawrence of Arabia, I have a sort of pact with myself that I'm only going to see it if it comes on at a cinema, because anything else just feels like a waste of that movie's potential. But you also start watching some of the early stuff, like Brief Encounter, and you think, this is basically like a World War II era British Linklater, isn't it? It's just two people in a cafe falling in love. It's like the exact opposite of what I thought David Lean was. So for me, the most interesting period is like the 50s stuff when he was making things like Sound Barrier, which are kind of halfway houses. They're definitely bigger scale. They hark more towards his epic work, but there's still a kind of intimacy to them, and that's where Summertime lands. It's exactly the kind of little love story that he would have made in the 40s. It's a nice movie about a woman who meets a man, finds out he's married, but it turns out he's married someone and they're estranged, and she has a moral dilemma over whether to continue the relationship. Very small thing that could easily be done on a Shepperton backlot. But because Lean has had a bit of a directorial glow up by this point, he's doing it in Venice in Technicolor with Katharine Hepburn. And it's it's a nice midpoint between the sort of intimate and the epic sides of Lean. I found it really seductive. I mean, it just looks gorgeous, which you'd say that was the least you expect from a technical 50s film set in Venice, but even by that standards, it looks gorgeous. There's a bit where someone like throws a bucket of household waste in a Venice canal, and you think, no, even that looks great. I don't get why Katharine Hepburn's wrinkling her nose at that. It looks gorgeous. I've really come around on Lean, and I always have a special place in my heart for directors where I can throw my hands up and say, yeah, fair's fair, I was completely wrong about you. You're a much more interesting filmmaker than I thought you were.
Yeah, excellent. That's Summertime.
Summertime, yes. Yeah.
Anything else?
The other thing that I wanted to talk about from extracurricular stuff, I recently rewatched Fata Morgana by Werner Herzog for no reason other than I was doing, that film on film thing where they're favourite film from 1970 blah, 1980 blah. Yeah, I was doing that. And I did the one for 71 and I thought, Fata Morgana. And then I thought, it's been years since you watched Fata Morgana. You don't even have a Letterboxd review for it and you love that film so much. So I thought, right. So, over Britain's summer heat wave, I went to the comparatively chilly, relaxing, cool climes of the Sahara Desert with Werner Herzog. And Fata Morgana is not one of those films that people talk about as one of his great films, and I see why, but for me it is so liberating. There is no plot, almost no structure to it. It is purely a record of things that Herzog has seen on his travels, and I think it's the kind of great film where, on the one hand, you look at it and you say, that's a singular vision, that's amazing, no one else could have made that. But you also think, I want to make a film like that. It's a paradox. You think like no one else could do it, but you want to do it. And it does remind you that sometimes, that there's that old Jean-Luc Godard line about all you need for a movie is a girl and a gun. I think there is a woman in this. There's no guns. There are no humans for large stretches of the film.
That's such a weird quote because he's basically just talking about kidnapping a girl.
Yeah, he doesn't even mention a camera, which I think is quite important in filmmaking. But Fata Morgana is just pure observation. It's just like landscape and movement and animals and how strange the world looks when Werner Herzog's seeing it. And it's just a completely liberating film. I think every rule of filmmaking is broken, and it's great.
Okay, Mike.
Yeah, as I've just seen that. I think he's just released a novel. Always about
he has, yeah.
It's like what the earth's that can be like. Most recent thing I've seen is Elvis. I don't know if it's just been chatted on the podcast yet.
Yeah, it has, but you can talk. It's fine.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Although the funniest thing I've seen recently is Bruce Campbell was asked about it because obviously he played Elvis in
Bubba Hotep.
Yeah, and he was asked about what do you think of Austin Butler? And say he really tried, didn't he? Which I think is very ungenerous. I think Austin Butler was absolutely. It felt like I was just watching Elvis. I just forgot. He got for me, the mannerisms, the voice, the physicality, just. Amazingly, I really enjoyed it. I think it's probably one of my favourite Baz Luhrmann film I've seen. Probably, it sort of suits. I like the approach it takes off with the Colonel Tom. With Tom Hanks. I don't think has he done many villainous roles or close to villains? Because this is usually the most unpleasant I've seen him. I think.
Vote to Petition's the only one that springs to mind for me.
Yeah. So I like that framing device of you're seeing. So I saw a review. Someone described it as Elvis is a film about the subject of a biopic being trapped in a biopic. Which makes a great pitch. And basically, it does sum up how the film works. And that it's a guy he just wants to do songs and have a good time, and he sort of becomes caught up in this sort of machinations and being pulled in these different directions. Yeah, I really enjoy it, and it's a intimidating running time, but it flies by. I think it's really good fun.
Anything else?
That's the most recent thing I've seen, apart from that's it really.
Okay, so I'll close out. 2. I really like Wormwood. It's a 2014 Australian zombie comedy. Watched a sequel, Wormwood Apocalypse. I think it debuted at Glasgow Fright Fest. It's trash. Just picture it's like two series. Series 1 explains everything. Everything's good. And then season 2 happens 7 years later and it explains nothing at all. Picks up exactly where it left off and nothing makes sense. Whereas the previous one sort of built up to its level of anarchy of zombies that breathe fuel and these sort of states of people being both zombie and human. And this is, okay, well, just drop it all there. Deal with it. I'm not going to explain it. I'm not going to try to explain it. Just deal with it. It's there. Do it. It's like, it's just headache inducing, honestly. And the other one is probably the anime movie from this year. It's got the most attention. Belle.
Yes.
Is it Mamoru Hosoda? Yeah, Mamoru Hosoda's sort of remake of Beauty and the Beast. Its subtitle is The Dragon and the Freckled Princess. It certainly takes Beauty and the Beast in a separate direction. It takes Beauty and the Beast to Japan, where a mousy high school teenager who watches her mum die in the opening scene as she tries to rescue another kid loses her confidence. Fast forward to the future, and we're in this reality where there's this app on your phone. You put the things in your ears, you go into this alternate reality where the software will find the true value of your character, of your personality, and project your avatar into this world. Talks a lot about social media. It doesn't make any sense, the story, because you can simultaneously be both in reality and in the social media world at the same time, and it just blurs those lines so much. You don't know where you're supposed to be and what makes any sense whatsoever. It's just very, very confusing. But people who like I like punk rock and all sorts of things, like sort of dirtier end of music. This is very J-pop, sort of polished J-pop. But the people who like that sort of thing have said great things about the music. It looks gorgeous as well. And it's genuinely a very, very inventive remake of a very old and probably over-adapted story. No, not probably. It's definitely over-adapted.
Yes.
But yeah, it's well worth watching, Belle. It's probably for people a bit younger than I am, but it has a lot to offer you.
I've just, sorry, and I'm jumping in a bit. I forgot to mention Incantation, which I also seen.
I really want to.
Taiwanese found footage horror movie. It's really great fun, really creepy in certain elements. Possibly a wee bit slow. Takes a while to get going, but really worth checking out. And if I can't remember the name of it, but if you don't like the holes in it, like if you're scared of holes,
tryptophobia.
Yeah, it's got scenes of that in it, and it's a bit vomit-inducing. But
sorry, what? Holes?
Yeah,
it's like holes, like in a. I know what you're talking about. It's like in a pattern, isn't it? Sort of like
it's almost like there's like holes in the skin of people in it, and it's that type of circles. Is it circles or holes? I can never remember. It's a certain type of gives you just like a skin crawling feeling. Trypophobia or something. Yeah, but Incantation definitely worth checking out.
That's a 2018 because that's like new out on Netflix, isn't it? It's like
Yeah, it's just came out in the past couple of weeks, and it seems to be gaining a bit of traction.
Yeah,
well, people who care about that sort of thing, not from Netflix. Netflix are like, it's on there, just forget about it. Okay, so I think that's about everything for this week. So yeah, very good. Next week, part 2 of this episode, where we'll have like the ugly stepchild movies compared to these. That's maybe not the right way to word it.
Prejudice it, man.
But these are the sort of the big cornerstones, whereas they're the outliers, maybe.
Fair. Yeah.
A better way to phrase it. We have E2 Mama Tambien and Harry Potter and, here we go, Prisoner of Azkaban?
Yep, correct.
Mike, where can we find you online?
So I run the blog An Autistic Guide Through Horror. You can follow our socials at Autistic Horror on Instagram and Twitter. I also have been doing reviews for The Geek Show, one of which will be Belle once I've finished writing it up. So that'll be coming out soon as well.
Yes. Graham?
I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Graham W Film, and you can find me on Letterboxd by searching for Graham Williamson. I also run the Pop Screen podcast on The Geek Show, where we look at a different movie either starring about or by a pop star every episode. And I write for The Geek Show and Horrified.com.
Excellent. And Andy?
Get me on Twitter at Nowhere Andy. I'm the host of the Road to Nowhere podcast, which is at Where Is Nowhere. We started out mainly as a monthly kind of horror, sci-fi and comic book podcast. It's now kind of branching out. We've got a section Direct to Nowhere, which Rob, you have been a part of.
Yes.
And that'll be out at the time of recording. The latest one that's came out was Larry discussing Sylvester Stallone with Kevin Mann of the Attitude Era podcast. And that was a good listen. And yeah, it's just basically on there at Where Is Nowhere, talking directors and stuff.
Yeah.
But definitely
if you want Well, yeah. If you want to keep up with what I am doing, what the podcast doing, you can follow me on social media, Twitter and Instagram at UncutRobcast, that's UncutRobcast. So yeah, that's it for this week. Thank you for listening, and that has been Directors Uncut.